All right, Bill. So you wanted to talk about your dad, and he was into Christianity. Your mom was into the Christian Science, and you ended up in Christianity, and you wanted to talk about what your dad taught you today.
Yeah, it was an interesting dynamic between my mom and dad. Mom was a dreamer and she was into every little spiritual thing that came up, which led her to the Baha'i faith and Edgar Casey and a lot of other uh, pieces of information. But the thing with that religion she showed me, think of a scale. If you have more bad than good, you might just be ended. So you had to keep balance and keep, and it's not a very good system, especially with me because from a young age, I did naughty things. I don't know why I did naughty things. I know I was molested at the age of 2 before I can remember. I can remember telling lies before anyone taught me to teach lies. I can remember stealing before anyone taught me to steal. And my dad, he taught me a lot of good things, but he taught me discipline. And he sat me down one day and he talked about what Jesus went through on the cross step by step. Now I'm about 4 years old, and he's going through graphic detail with me of exactly how that man died. And it was a lot to take in, but he says, well, so he's the savior out there. And so you know what he went through. He died for all of mankind. And it was really interesting to hear his side of it. He came from a Presbyterian background, and he wasn't real active. We went to the little church down the way. We were living out in the country at the time, and it was an interesting place to live. It was Carroll State Hospital, and my dad's job was to find patients places to live outside the hospital. So he'd go to the local motel and he'd say, "Do you have any empty rooms?" "Yeah, we always have empty rooms." He says, "How'd you like me to fill them up?" And he'd go to the local restaurant and say, I got these people. The state will pay you some money if you can find some work for them to do. "Oh, yeah, we got work to do. Bring them in." And so he was at the time when they were starting to move mentally ill patients out into society. And it's become a problem since then, but he was on the start of that. So we're on the hospital grounds, and I'd fly my kite. He'd tell me not to fly it by the wires, and because I might get electrocuted. But I looked over, I'm in the field and my kite's not doing nothing, but the wind's blowing real good over there. So I go over there and fly my kite, and dad comes out and sees me. He smashes my kite and gives me a good spanking. And, he doesn't want to see me get electrocuted, but I didn't understand that. Or he had a motorcycle. So I got up on his motorcycle and fell over and broke his mirror. I got a spanking after that too. But then his friend came over, and I sat on his motorbike. It tipped over. I broke his mirror. Then he made the Board of Education. He cut out of plywood a nice paddle. And me and Mr. Board of Education got to know each other rather well. And so when I'm trying to decide, Mom said I got to go somewhere. I could go to Christian Science. I could go to a Baha'i Faith Sunday school. They had a thing for kids. Or I could find my own church. And so we moved to Saginaw, which is a bigger city not far from where we lived. And I had to make this decision. And I asked Mom, where should I go? They all believe in Jesus, don't they? And, I found out that people believe Jesus in many different ways, but I saw Jesus as he's presented in Mark as a servant, that somebody that wants to wash your feet and forgive the person that just did something they shouldn't. And, and he's kind of, here I am with all kinds of problems, and he's kind of my solution because, this is a ministry of reconciliation. I obviously didn't understand that concept. I understood getting spanked. So, but I saw, a forgiving, loving God that died in my place to take the sense of going through punishment for what I did. And I admire Jesus. And so I went to Christian Science, and all I heard about was Mary Baker Eddy. And I didn't want to hear about Mary Baker Eddy. I wanted to hear about Jesus. And so I went to the Baha'i classes, and they'd sing, "Man is one, God is one, religions are one," and that was, great kumbaya back in the day. But they didn't talk about Jesus, even though the leader of the religion told a guy once, "If you want to join the faith, you got to become a Christian first," because they're allegedly built on the pyramid of prophets, starting with Adam, and you can't contradict any one of them along the way, according to what she teaches, which is, a fact. I mean, Christianity needs to, be aware of what was in the old covenant, so they could take a look at what might not apply today, like having a garment with two different threads mixed together. And so I went to my dad's Presbyterian church. The pastor there was his pastor down in Bluffton, Indiana, when he was a kid, which was, kind of a strange coincidence, but it was also kind of cool. And his expression was, "I'll wring your neck." So you didn't want to do anything bad either, because pastor was going to wring your neck. And we learned all the, Bible stuff that kids normally learn. But I didn't feel anything but bullied by the other kids. And so it was just like school. I was a short, little chubby guy. And at school, I got picked on a lot. And but that was the way it was back in the day. There were bullies everywhere, and you just dealt with it. My dad told me to fight back. I said, "But it's three girls beating me up every day, Dad."
Oh, wow.
Just, well, then hit them. Don't
Wow.
let them walk all over you. And so I saw Billy Graham on TV. He came on every summer, and I really got drawn to him, telling me about Jesus and wanting to repent and wanting to go up in the front. And so I said the prayer along with everybody else, and I prayed that night that Billy Graham got $1 million, because he said he needed $1 million to put on. So that was kind of, my first experience with an evangelist. And so I kind of, went back and forth a little bit. And one day my dad came home and he says, "This preacher invited me to go to church this Sunday. I thought we'd all go." And so we went, and I was about 12 or 13. And it was an Assembly of God Pentecostal church. They're kind of like your Baptist background, except, they add gifts into it. And so I went, and I heard the pastor talking to me. I'm like, how's he getting inside my head? How does he know what I'm thinking? And, at the end, he says, "I know that you need to be forgiven." And he does an altar call, and I go up front, and I felt a transformation. I felt a change. I felt what I'd been missing all that time by, looking at all these. I said, "Wow, I found a home here." And it was interesting learning their theology. They said that any promise made to Jesus is also made to us. They said because we are adopted into the family of God, any promise in the Old Testament we can claim too. But the Old Testament's a little different. To get a promise from the Old Testament, there's always, something you have to do. And I learned that reconciliation means that you have to move towards God, and He needs to help you along the way. You get saved and God cleans you up, is basically what they said. This is the lifestyle you need to live, and you're going to be convicted by that spirit in you if you're doing something you shouldn't. And I saw that, and so it was like a living experience for me. And I was going around giving out New Testaments at school, and I was sneaking off at night. Dad had a key, and I'd go in there and I'd sing songs with nobody in the thing. And I did that 5-6 times, sneaking out at night to go sing and worship at the church all by myself. I was on fire. And so
Were you a teenager then?
I was a teenager, 14, 15. And I thought that was the answer to all that, but they were also, I'd hear these ladies singing, they'd speak in tongues, and it didn't mesh with me. We had this one lady every Sunday, she'd start speaking in tongues. It was obvious she had some mental problems, and, I mean, when I hear people in Assemblies of God preach on speaking in tongues, they leave parts out of chapter 14 that they don't want to say. They only say the things they want to use, and they don't take it they take it out of context. And I think there is a room for speaking in tongues and interpretation, but not during a Sunday morning service.
Did they believe that everybody should speak in tongues, or that it was a special gift to some people?
Yes, they do, and I totally disagree with that point of view.
Yeah.
I believe each of us has our own supernatural spiritual gifts. And, I hadn't yet noticed anything in me except that, I had big question marks over my head. I was bored in school. I ended up repeating the third grade simply because when we got to English, we got past adjectives and I shut down. I went to my little dream world, like the cartoon with the kid that's the airplane pilot, and then he's fighting tanks on the battlefield, and the teacher keeps that. That was me in school. I just go daydream into something else. It was boring. They put me in what they called remedial reading, which meant they're going to give me the same book they gave me last year and do it all over again. I kind of got it, but I also had problems with story problems. I couldn't get those. I don't know why. They make sense to me now, but my brain wasn't developed full enough at that time, I suppose. So I did have some disabilities, but I was mainly bored.
Okay.
If I had applied myself, I could have overcome anything that was going on there. And it helped with school too.
Did you get baptized at some point?
At some point, I was at mom had me baptized at day 3 in some type of Episcopal church, and I was also baptized as a young adult.
So when you became an adult, how was that transition in your spiritual life? Was it just a continuation, or?
Oh, well, we got, a huge thing to talk about first about that. I'll probably want to do that in its own separate little segment, my later teenage years, simply because there are some things that happened that kind of need to be in one chapter.
Okay.
And right now I'm mostly trying to stick to things that happened in my early teenage years.
Okay.
And give you kind of paint that picture so that when I start, backsliding, which we call it, I need to be careful how I introduce that and how we go through it, because I don't want to give people the wrong impression.
Okay. So your dad in this, from childhood to teenage years, he's teaching you. Are you going to the Episcopal church still, or did you change churches? Or
Yep, I
did he end up going?
Yeah, I changed to the Pentecostal Assembly of God.
Yeah.
When Dad moved up Saginaw and met that preacher, and I felt home there for the first time. I hadn't really felt that in any place else I'd gone. I wasn't being picked on. I wasn't being harassed, like I was in school and like I was in some of the other churches I went to. Dad taught me my work ethic. He was very good at making sure I kept busy mowing the yard and taking out the trash and doing stuff around the house. And he told me if a boss asks you to do 10 things, do 12. And in my work career, I've always done that. I've always tried to not only meet my expectations, but to try to overachieve them. Too bad I didn't learn that in school. So they had a test in like 3rd grade. And the principal called my dad and said, your son cheated. His IQ is nowhere near that high. Dad said, fine, retest him. And so they got the school social worker to retest me, and Dad's ticked off. He's like, you don't understand, kid. You got a high IQ and you can do anything you want to do. I didn't get that. So I was wasting opportunity. My dad calls my life at that time the Blunder Years. If you remember the sitcom, The Wonder Years, you might not, but somebody out there will. But the blunder instead of wonder, Dad did everything to try to motivate me into learning. That was my major. I was interested in spiritual stuff, but I could care less for the rest of it. I remember I wanted to join Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts. He says, you can't till you get your grades up. So 6 months later, Well, we'll let you join Boy Scouts. Maybe you'll get your grades up. And my mom and dad were inconsistent in the way they treated me. Dad was trying to motivate me, to wake me up, and mom was spoiling me, giving me pretty much anything I wanted. And that dynamic, I mean, everybody is a product of the environment that they're raised in. And, you know, you got to look at the full picture of somebody's life, especially if they're talking in the spiritual or the prophetic. You need to understand people's background, because a good psychiatrist could look at me and say, yeah, well, this explains everything, and we're all whole persons. And, but my early years set the stage, and I didn't realize it till it was too late. We get wise too late and die too quick. And, so I found fulfillment on one level, but at the same time, my whole life is falling apart. And in order for me to figure that out, I had to hit bottom. And next time we can talk about how I hit bottom. But I'm just, like I said, trying to paint the picture. Dad would take me for rides on his motorcycle, and he'd set me on the tank, and I'd be holding on, no helmet, We go running around on the motorcycle, I can remember driving a car at 4 or 5. Dad would put me on his lap, and I'd get to hold on to the wheel same time he did. So, and he took us on vacation every summer, Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, Rocky Mountain National Park, Yosemite, California. So I got to travel around and see many different things as a child too. And mom made sure that, we were segregated at that time, and she's going to make sure that she takes me over to the other side of the town and puts me in an environment where I'm surrounded by kids my own age that are a different race than me. And I just fit right in. I did, but I was raised in a predominantly white school. So in elementary and middle school, we did not have anyone but Hispanic and white Caucasians. So in the early 60s growing up and into the early 70s, life was a lot different than it was today. And things happened, like I said, my dad riding me on the front of his motorcycle, hanging onto the handlebars, that today you wouldn't think of. And kids, don't try that at home. So,
No.
Don't get the wrong idea, Dad.
So,
get helmet on the kids.
Your channel's called Revelations My Mother Taught Me. Why did you go that direction instead of something about your father? Because it sounds like that had more influence in your identity as a Christian.
I do believe that the overall picture, if I'm going to blame anybody for my spiritual development, it would have to be my mom.
Okay.
Because she gave me the tools of critical thinking to be able to decide what is best for me.
And your dad was more practical.
Dad's the doer, mom's the dreamer. So dad didn't have any vision, and mom didn't have any ambition.
Yeah. Okay. And so it sounded like you had a lot of potential in the practical world with whatever you wanted to do, and but you were more interested in the spiritual aspect. And so, yeah, what did you learn in the spiritual aspect with your dad and in the church he went to?
Well, I learned, my dad asked me once, Bill, why do kids do drugs? I said, Dad, they learn from their parents. I saw you drink 6 cups of coffee to get up out of bed every day, and I saw you drink a 6-pack of beer to go to sleep every night. And you're asking me why kids do drugs?
Oh, yeah. So it wasn't obvious to him. Huh?
Yeah, Dad wasn't the best example on some things.
Okay.
I mean, he had Northeastern Indiana expressions that were vulgar.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it was a different time and a different place. So Dad was the doer, but he was also not focused on the spiritual at all. He's focused on the material.
I imagine he didn't speak in tongues either, huh?
No. But he did go
Okay.
to the church, and he did quit drinking his beers.
Oh,
Not the
wow.
coffee. Not the coffee.
No, no. Okay, so what happened to help him to let go of that? The beer.
Well, he felt it was the right thing to do. He quit smoking at um, when I was 3 years old, 4 years old, because he had high blood pressure and he didn't want to have a stroke and then have his family left because it was real high and he had to go on heavy medication. Dad, his father was the town drunk.
Oh,
And he,
okay.
he didn't go down that way. He ended up joining the Navy, and then he went to college on the GI Bill, and he got a degree in social work from a 4 year, and then he got a master's degree when I was 3 years old down in Ann Arbor. So, um, Dad was very smart. Dad was very good at making friends. Dad was very skilled. He ended up as a school social worker dealing with kids with problems. The thing with Dad is when he came home from work, he didn't want to deal with anything except watch the news and read his paper and didn't want to have to deal with problems with his kids. He was kind of disconnected because of his childhood. He spent 7, 8 years in a child's home. His older brother got to stay with his dad after he remarried, and he was shipped off. Talk about being abandoned and rejected. That was during the Great Depression. So imagine living in an orphanage during the Great Depression. He was malnourished, and for that reason, his arms and legs are shorter than they should be.
Okay.
So my dad had a lot of challenges to overcome. And
Well, it
my
sounds like
grandpa,
he made a lot of progress, especially as his dad being an alcoholic, and he started going down that road. Alcohol tends to increase over time, especially if you're drinking daily. And so he had a wake up call and let go of that. And that's something to be proud of.
yeah, I mean, my grandfather was so proud of that guy because he didn't go down the same path as dad. It's very easy to do that. And I got alcoholism on my mother's side of the family too.
Wow.
And so I'm in the dichotomy between a dreamer and a doer. I mean, it's not quite like being between a good witch and an evil one,
No. Well,
but
it's
I
two
got,
different ways of living. And I kind of think people need to find their version of spirituality that fits them. That's why you have all kinds of different denominations, even within Christianity, hundreds and hundreds of different, because there's different things that fit different people.
and from a spiritual point of view, mom's radical Eastern and dad's radical Western, and I'm right in
Mhm.
the middle.
Hmm.
And
Um,
that's going to dictate the rest of my life.
okay.
So,
Uh,
and
I
we can get
can't.
into the rest a little more later, but um, that's my thoughts.
Okay. And yeah, I can't think of any more questions concerning your dad other than he had a good trajectory and progressed in a good direction. And a lot of people continue to drink coffee in the morning. It's a really good drug because it's a 24-hour drug, and by the time you wake up in the morning, it's ready to be reloaded, and it's good for the day. You
I
know.
had a boss that was a Mormon. You might know about them out there. And
Uh-huh.
we did a catering. I was out in Los Alamos. No, San Angelo, General Electric, General Telephone Southwest. And we had a catering, and all he had to drink was coffee and tea. And somebody complained, and he's like, man, I'm Mormon, and all I got is coffee and tea for them to drink. What's up with that, you know?
I think they're able to drink soda though, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
it's
they can
not
drink a
coffee.
lot of things. It's just the caffeine that they need to. They preach don't drink caffeine.
They can't. I thought they could have like Dr. Pepper or something like that.
Well, they're tweaking.
Oh,
I
okay.
checked them. I checked them out pretty good. It's caffeine that
Oh,
they're
okay. Huh.
anti.
Huh.
But
Um,
anything can be a vicious circle.
hmm.
So spirituality is more the what I call pyramid wraparound. Every time you go through the process, you get better at what you do. And the
Hmm.
vicious circle is the opposite. Every time you go through the circle, you get worse. And I'll
All
get
right.
more into that later on. But that's kind of the base of spirituality is to, on my mom's side, to reach your nirvana or enlightenment or there's a plateau everyone's looking for. Where in Christianity, we're looking for a new mind, a new body, the mind of Christ. We're looking to, both sides are kind of looking for a higher level of consciousness, but in different ways.
Did did your dad have any like morning routine with the Bible, devotions, or whatever? No? Okay. Did he read the newspaper? Yeah, that's what it is.
He
Yeah.
was into current events.
Okay. Huh.
I mean,
They
I'm
just,
sure not that it's a devotional. Like I said, Dad was more the practical type. And be quite honest with you, you can learn a lot just looking at the world around you spiritually.
yeah. Well, that sounds like a complete picture and a decent childhood, teenage years. You started going, well, pretty aggressive with the Christianity and going out and witnessing. Did anything change in your later teenage years before adulthood?
Yeah, I backslid, but we'll get more into that in the next
Okay,
segment.
that's not for this
Yeah,
video.
I kind of, it's going to take me at least 30 or 40 minutes to get through that and give a justice or injustice. Justice will be served cold, they say.
All right. Well, I do you feel like that's what that's a wrap for this one, or?
Yeah, I think we can leave it with Mom, the dreamer, Dad, the doer, and me sitting right in the middle.
All right, and then we'll get into your backsliding and moving into adulthood and all that other stuff.
And military and what happened after that.
Okay. Well, that sounds good to me.
All right, thank you. Because what we're really trying to do here is show how not only I became self-aware in the Lord, but how I progressed in the Lord. And maybe somebody will be blessed by that.
Okay. All
All
righty.
right. Nice talking to you again.
All right. We'll do it again.